Hello, everyone. Yes, so my name is Evgeniy Batchvarov. I graduated Aberdeen in 2020 with a degree in finance and economics. And yes, right now I'm an equity research associate, well, actually a senior equity research associate in Bloomberg Intelligence, which is kind of the equity research arm of the company. And yeah, so that's the basic about me. And yeah, I'm based here in London and been here for about 4 years now. So straight up after uni, came over here, and yeah, that's about it.
Perfect, thank you. And why did you choose University of Aberdeen for your education?
Well, it was actually a couple of things. I really wanted to speak in a English speaking sorry, study in an English speaking nation. So that's what made me look at the UK. And then when I was deciding between universities within the UK, I was looking at the academic rigor and how good the programs are, obviously, across the different universities. I was looking at the environment that the universities had. So actually, Aberdeen scored like very highly for me, and that it was like a perfect isolated place where you can just focus on whatever you wanted to focus on without minimal distractions. And lastly, which is like this is not a small part, it was free at the time for European students. So we used to have, I don't know if we still have this, but we used to have in Scotland free education for EU students, which helped quite a bit, especially like I didn't want to get myself in a tough financial position, so that was a great start at the time. But yeah, so the combination of all those and was actually like a fantastic, and I'm super happy that I actually went to Aberdeen.
Perfect, thank you. And what were some of your favorite memories from Aberdeen?
Well, some of the favorite memories. Well, it's for some reason it's all to do with friends. Like the amount of people I met, the experiences that we shared together. Whether it was like the trips that we did for different conferences. So we used to do a lot of conferences. So we did the economics conferences in Edinburgh, the ones in Glasgow. Some people went to Warwick, but I didn't do that one. And then I did a couple of competitions going south with a couple of the people from the Trading and Investing Society. So all of that was fantastic because you ended up bonding quite well. I'm still incredibly close friends with all the people that I met through these events. And yeah, so that was the main part for me.
Perfect, thank you. And did you participate in any clubs or societies?
Yes, actually. So I did quite a bit of clubs. I was part of the consulting society in the beginning, so I was one of the first members there. So it was super interesting to study and see how consultants view the world from a managerial perspective. Alongside one of my best friends, founded the FinTech and Blockchain Club. So his idea was actually to build a blockchain club because he was into these things at the time. I was like, yeah, we're narrowing our vision a bit too much if we just do that. So let's expand a bit. So we started the FinTech and Blockchain Club. Another one that I'm really proud of is Trading and Investment Club. So when I joined, we were literally like 7, 8 people in a room. We were like one person sits in front, reads you the news of what's happened in the financial markets, and then we kind of discuss. And then myself and the rest that were there, like we decided, you know what, like let's build something big out of this. And we grew the club quite a bit. We created an educational program. We created this kind of stock pitching sectors and sector heads. And yeah, like that was one of them. And other clubs. I did a bit of sports clubs, but nothing that major. I mainly focused on the kind of these business related clubs because I mean that was kind of my passion.
Mm.
Wanted to go towards that.
Did you always know that you wanted to go into like business or finance industry after graduation?
Well, weirdly enough, like most people will tell you, I have no clue what I wanted to do. I actually am one of the lucky ones that I knew what I wanted to do from very early on. So I was quite good in math in school. So I have more than 50 math competitions when I was back in Bulgaria. So that's quite a bit. No, I was never like the best. Obviously, when you start doing these things, you really realize how many fantastic people there are. But it did make me appreciate the subject quite a bit. And I just remember I saw like the stock market one day popping up on TV when there was the financial crisis, and I asked my parents at the time, so what what is this? What are these popping numbers and like green, red, and all that, and why are people panicking? And they told me this is where the very smart people go. And from that moment, that quote, it just got ingrained in my head when I was a very little kid. So actually, after I did mathematics school, I switched to, in Bulgaria, we have these kind of trade schools. So it was a
Hmm.
trading and banking school.
Oh,
And then from then, again, like I switched to, went to Scotland, to Aberdeen, and the rest is history. Yeah.
yeah,
That was basically, so I knew from the very beginning that I wanted to do that
that's so cool. And do you stay in touch with many friends from university now?
all the time, all
Oh,
the time. Like every day, like I have a message from a friend from uni, like, oh, what do you think about this? Or yo, haven't seen you in ages. Let's catch up. Or people come and visit me at London. Okay, sorry, can I stay at yours? Or I'm in London. Let's catch up. Or if I travel somewhere, I meet people from Aberdeen. I mean, the great thing was that at the time it was so broad, the university. You could find people from every country. And now I go, like, I don't know, Austria. I have a friend in Austria. I go to Italy. I have a friend in Italy. So many places. And yeah, my best friends that are here are actually from Aberdeen. And we see each other like definitely, maybe not daily, but like weekly for sure. Like every week we see
mhm.
each other at one, two times. So yeah, it was a great experience from like a bonding perspective and networking perspective that way.
That's nice. And next question is, did you participate in any internships or part-time jobs while you were a student?
Uh, Yes, yes, I was so I've done a couple of things. I've worked for a tiny bit on a car wash in a garage. I've been a waiter for as well. That was like what was it, like second and third year. And yeah, like I did an internship actually. So I did an internship at Bloomberg and the same
Yeah.
team that I'm now. So 2019, most people I was third year at the time, most people were not thinking about internships. Me and my close friends, we were all like applying constantly. We were very stressed out. And honestly, we focused more on applying than we did on studying, which maybe was not the best from like a grades perspective, because then it made it much harder to catch up. But again, like I got the internship at the equity research team here. I did the internship during the summer of that year, and I think it was in the industrials team. And yeah, I ended up being successful. I got an offer back, and the cool thing was after that, the 2020 year, basically, I didn't have to focus at all on any of like applications or anything because I knew I was kind of secure at
Mhm.
that point, so I could focus on my dissertation and such. And yeah, I did quite well on that one.
That's very interesting. Thank you. And what is Bloomberg and what do they do?
Okay, that's a very, very broad question. Because I mean, the answer is very broad to that question because we do a lot of things. So I think the number one thing that people associate us with is media. So by media, I mean that we are the biggest financial outlet on the planet. So we supply a lot of the information, a lot of the research, a lot of the data, but actually the bigger part of the business of Bloomberg is actually the data. We are the number one financial data provider on the planet. We have more than a third of the market share, and we could grow that one, but again, there's business reasons why we don't want to necessarily grow that one that much more. Then we have obviously massive engineering department. They work on all sorts of projects, whether it is like trading systems, anything that can support financial bureau, a government, and such. And we also have government advisors. So uh, sometimes what happens is that a lot of our research or something else that an opinion writer would write, it gets traction, it gets noticed. These advisors, they will go to different governments. suggest topics. So I remember when it was 2019, when I was doing the internship, I was so impressed that we were advising the UK government on what should they do with ESG and how they should do it. Like they were literally coming to us and we were like telling them, okay, this is what you should do, and you can't judge industry by industry. Sorry, you can't judge everything with the same. You have to judge industry by industry, and these are the specific for every sector, and this is how you should measure. Now, did they listen? I don't know, but they at the end, like it's cool that your voice gets heard in that way as well. So you get that advisory arm too.
Yeah. Thank you. That's very interesting. And can you explain your particular role and responsibilities within the company?
Yeah, so my role falls within the Bloomberg intelligence team. We're a relatively new equity research desk, so about 15 years old now. Equity research and actually research in general in the financial world is anything to do with mainly public companies. So you do equity research, so you understand whether is the company performing well, why is it not performing well. You analyze the business, is the business model doing well? You analyze the market dynamics, and then we also have a massive credit section, so they look at all the debt and other stuff like that. We have an ESG section, so again, is the companies doing environmentally well? And we do have strategy teams. We do have that have many different sectors. We have policy teams. So very broad array of things. And what I do specifically is I'm on the equity side. So I am a senior associate in technically the consumer team, but within that, I support leisure and business services. That's all your airlines, all your casinos, all your hotels, and then on the leisure side. And then on the business services side, it's a bit niche businesses like recruiters, like accounting companies, like I don't know, building distributors, and like other services that way. So I have like a very broad portfolio, from which I have certain companies covered by my senior analysts.
Yeah.
Because the structure above the level above mine is analyst and then senior analyst is what it is. Yeah, so I support them. I develop my own coverage. I cover my own companies. I would end up speaking to CEOs, CFOs, I mean, CEOs if I can get in touch with them, but CFOs, investor relations teams, to try to formulate an idea and understanding about the company or sector. And then I have to benchmark them, compare them to one another, say when they're going to do well, so when they're not going to do well. It's again very similar to what you would do on what we call the sell side, is in the banks. The only difference would be that we don't provide a price tag at the end. So the banks will give you a price tag at the end. We'll do all the models, everything, but we will not provide a price tag. But again, that's a bit too technical, let's say.
Thank you. That's very interesting. And what does Bloomberg looking for in its applicants?
How
to stand out.
How to stand out. Okay. Obviously, there's a lot of different departments. So engineering, you have data, you have research, you have news, you have sales, you have many other departments. Now, all of these departments, they'll require different backgrounds. So do you need to have some idea of programming? Do you have some idea of systems engineering, or do you have some idea of finance? So you need to have the basics. That's a given. Now, what they want that you wouldn't necessarily get from a university is they want a person that is easygoing, that is a pleasure to speak to, that is social, is a good team member, is supportive of others. So these are things that you have to have. So you have to always be willing to jump in. You see your colleague swamped with work, you don't even wait for them to ask. You volunteer to help them with something. So these are some things. And then other things that you'd also be helpful for you is be engaged, creative, just keep asking questions, keep wanting to learn more, keep wanting to do more. Because again, like our work is not like it's finite. You don't have an end to it. the end is probably your imagination. You can keep going as long as you can think of new stuff. So, and there's always new stuff to think about. So they want someone to come in and figure, okay, this is an innovation, whether it is in my area, so it's like research innovation, or it's a product innovation, or it's a sales innovation. To summarize all these things, number one, be a pleasant person to work with. Be a person that's open to others and open to ideas. Number two, be creative and try to develop new things. Number three, try to help people, and again, be open to other people. So I would say these are some of the main things. Like there's of course many other characteristics that they're not necessarily like that I haven't mentioned, but again, nice to haves. A nice to have would be nowadays to have a tiny bit of programming skill. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be a coder or anything. It just means like you kind of know the syntax or what the hell Python is, you know. So for some roles, so you can do that. Like when I was applying, I had zero Python skills, and in all honesty, at the time, the application it said nothing about like you're required to have any programming knowledge for this finance job. But at the end, the assessment center, they send me a message. It was like, in 2 days, this is your, in 4 days, this is your ticket to fly to London. This is your hotel. We want you to do math. We want you to do stats. We want you to do some analysis. And then at the bottom was like, oh, Python. And I'm like shocked. Like, well, what the hell do they mean by Python? So I stepped the days that I had left. I studied the very bare minimum that I can understand about the function of code. And then at the interview, I actually did all right on that as well. So yeah, Python is like, or not Python, but like programming is necessary in the modern job, I would say. So
that's very interesting. Thank you for your advice. And what is the proudest moment in your career?
Proudest moment of my career. So I have actually quite a bit. Like one of them would definitely be helping someone get in the company and then seeing them do really well. Because I'm so proud when I see anyone that I've recommended or has gone in and they do well and they do good work. It's just like it's a fantastic feeling because then you get the notion, yeah, I both did a good choice in recommending this person, and like they're just thriving. That's their environment. Another one would be from the more tangible aspects would be new ideas that I've generated. So I've done many, so I'm not going to even remember all of them. But let's say, like during the Olympics, I was writing about how effectively demand is not as high as people think, and travel is not as high as people think. So there's going to be an issue with the number of passengers, number of travelers through planes, number of hotel stays, and we built this like a nuanced kind of. It was relatively small, like, but still, like we built that, and I actually had messages from news outlets trying to interview me at the end, and that I've had other instances where figure out that this one industry is up to be absolutely hammered by AI, and no one else had actually written a report on that. So that was very interesting, and it got quite a lot of traction. Still getting quite a lot of traction. What else? What else do I have? And yeah, like I did well on ESG report. So when I saw when I discover something that people haven't discovered again, and rank it in a certain way, it is quite nice. It's a good feeling. And usually you get very mean messages from the companies themselves, especially if you give them something negative. But again, that means that you're somewhat doing your job. So you're finding stuff, and you again, like X company was doing poorly on emissions. And I highlighted that because they were trying to tell everyone that, oh no, we're fantastic. And every year they move their benchmark higher and higher, higher, something that sounds amazing, but they never really get to, and they're never really achieved. So I made like to compare how are they doing on their emissions compared to what they were previously saying. And they were always under what they were saying, but they were always promising more. And people appreciated that. The airline, the company did not appreciate that. And they actually, like when they don't like that. You know, you're at
Yeah.
risk of being sued. And I had like within a couple hours, the entire like the investor relations team messaging and jumping in a call with a couple of people because they want to they want to poke holes in your thesis and your data and then question you. So like when you get these things, when you see some reaction because you're right and they can't prove you wrong, then that's also a really good feeling. So there's like so many situations when things like this have happened, but it's just difficult to like
Yeah.
point all of them out.
That's
Yeah.
very impressive. Thank you. And how do you manage your time effectively?
So number one would be always whenever you think you're having an appointment or whenever you talk about having an appointment, schedule it in a calendar app. Now we have like this on terminal system that is just like a calendar. So I have all my appointments in there. Even if I forget, I've sent myself like a notification period before that, so I get a message. I use a lot for my personal notes, and not only personal life, but like work life as well. Evernote. So that's like a
Mhm.
note-taking app that is really, really handy. And then I have like because I have to keep track of many things. You know, I have to keep track of when companies are reporting. I have to keep track of contacts, conferences, indicators that governments publish, which come like every day, different types. And what I do is at the end of every month, I set one day that's like I know I'll be in the office. That I sit down for an hour, 2 hours, however long it takes, and I booked all these appointments in my calendar if I've missed any.
Yeah.
That really helps. So yeah, again, like it's a calendar thing, a note-taking app, and then like schedule a day to do that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And
those.
what are some books or podcasts you would recommend career and non-career related for you?
So I did actually look at one of the previous videos that you did. So I
Yeah.
knew you were going to ask me that question.
Mhm.
So I've actually taken notes of a couple of things that I quite like. So this is actually the first one is Warren Buffett's favorite, and this is not a finance book. This is absolute must read for everyone. Doesn't matter what area you're in. It's How to Make Friends and Influence People. Super important book. A very nice book to read. It's just like it's a necessity to everyone that wants to succeed in any career because at some stage you'll realize, as sad as it is, it's not necessarily the effort that you put in that is the biggest thing that stands out. It's how you communicate it and how you communicate yourself and how you treat others. That's the number one thing that's the most important for your career. Um, Other life kind of books are the Black Swan by Nassim Taleb. That is a bit of a strange one, and I don't recommend it to everyone necessarily, but it does talk about improbable events and it makes you think about risks and makes you think about things that haven't happened. And it kind of breaks your mold because we always look everything through the lens of, oh, this it's never going to happen. But why would it not? You know, that's the question. So that's the question that that book asks and it talks about. Um, a bit of a caveat on this one. So Principles by Dalio, but only half of the book, like the first half of the book. I really like at the beginning, I was like a bit engaged when I was reading it. I did this in uni. I read the Principles in uni, but the second half of the book, where they start talking corporate, it's just like all the same things from the first part repeated again. But I think it's a good idea to structure your life and like what you believe in and figure out some principles for yourself. And he outlines a couple of good ones. So that's a nice read. And I was recently reading actually, Charlie Munger, Buffett's former partner. So he has this Poor Charlie's Almanac. He didn't write it himself, but it's a collaboration of some of his speeches and talks. And that's cool because it doesn't only talk about business, it talks about life advice. So that was a really cool life book. And then, like on the finance side, you obviously have the intelligent investor. That's a given. Obviously, like if you're trying to get into equity researchers, best practices for equity research analysts. It's a very good book. Valuation by McKinsey, actually. surprisingly, the consultants did a really good job on writing a valuation book because what they did was they simplified the language. A lot of the time, like when people talk about finance, they try to overcomplicate it. They did a somewhat simplified version that I think everyone can understand. And then lastly, like on the finance books would be the manual of ideas, and that's by Mikhailovich, and he basically gives you ways of thinking of ideas in like the finance world. And then okay, I have one other one. So I know I'm spoiling with you with so many books, but
That's amazing.
this
Thank
one
you.
is for management students. For management students, it's something that it's very few people have actually heard of it. I've talked about this book with friends. Most of them didn't know it. It's called Outsiders, and it talks about eight CEOs. Like it looks at different sectors, every single one of them, and it talks why are these people so fantastic at what they did. It's like he looks at a couple of CEOs, tracks when they did what they did, and how everything looked before them and how like people were, yeah, this is never going to work. So that was a cool book that they tracked their efforts and their success at the end. Um, so yeah, that those are from the book side and podcast side. I don't really have much time to listen to podcasts, but whenever I can, there's like two that I check. This is like one that a friend of mine recommended to me, Matthew. Actually, he was in the Autic as well a while back. The podcast is called Acquired. They look at different companies and they break down a detailed history of them, and it's just like an interesting thing to hear on the side. And then another one is I'll promote Bloomberg a bit. Odd Lots. They also have like some interesting ideas about companies, teams, other stuff, and they discuss them over there. So yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you very much for your recommendations. And next question is, what does it take to succeed in your field?
Well, we should ask my boss. He's the one that's successful. But okay, I would say that you have to be constantly curious. You have to never be content with the answer until proven that you're wrong. Which you should also be willing to accept that you're wrong whenever you're wrong. Um, Something that's very important to success, and I mentioned this a couple of times, like throughout the talk, is how you talk to people and how you manage people. Again, in the beginning of my career, I didn't do this enough. I was a bit this guy that I was on production. I was pumping out data, research, whatever I was doing, and I didn't focus enough on the people. But the people are the main part of the job, and with time, I've learned that a bit more, and I will be doing that a bit more. But that's very important. So I leave that as final and probably the most important out of the previous. Yeah.
Thank you. And do you think networking is important in your industry?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Again, I don't do this as much as I should. I should do that a lot more. Networking, I think in every industry is useful. At mine, it's useful because again, I find the people in my industry fascinating. I find that I learn from every single one usually, and that's why I think it's super important to mingle, to network, to go to events when there's like an outdoors investor relation day. Go there, speak with the people. Usually they keep to themselves for a good reason because they don't want to tell you what they're thinking. Because if you know what they're thinking, you know how to act. But again, it's a nice thing to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. And a lot of students struggle with transition from academia to professional world. What advice would you give to students to navigate this problem and challenge?
Okay, good question. Um, I mean, I'd say just get out there. Like, one of the biggest mistakes I think you can make is not taking enough risks and stopping yourself out of fear, out of the fear that you're not good enough. We've all been there. I've had imposter syndrome. Everyone's had imposter syndrome. My friends, literally everyone that I know. And the one thing that gets you out of it is by doing things. So do things, put yourself in uncomfortable positions, talk to other people. I'd say like those are like the main things.
Yes, thanks.
Absolutely.
And the last question for today is, if you could go back in time, would you change anything about your time as a student at University of Aberdeen, or would you give yourself any advice?
I would give myself the networking advice,
Mhm.
and I would give myself the risk-taking advice. Now, I did take a lot of risks, but I should have taken a lot more. And networking, the way I got my job was just like I was straight up applying to companies. I did not message people in advance, which was a big mistake. I should have been doing that. I mean, I still kind of brute forced my way into the industry, but I could have made it like in a much simpler way by just messaging people and doing that. But yes, and okay, one last advice would be don't stress out and don't take yourself too seriously. I would have told myself both of those things because again, like at some point, if you're trying to be a high performer, you're gonna get overworked, you're gonna get exhausted, and our industry, not and honestly every industry, is not about sprinting. It's about like maintaining a steady pace for the long run. And again, not stressing yourself out is, I'd say, the very important uh, thing. And don't let anything like influence you as much. Because at the end of the day, this is, don't tell Bloomberg, but just a job. Uh, so there's like much more to life than this.